Hello and welcome to the NextPowerUp review summary of Just Cause 3. This is the third title in the series by Avalanche Studios, built with the typical Avalanche engine, except this is, to summarise, all in all, within about 10 seconds, this is basically like Just Cause 2, but better. In most ways, not all, but just in most, they seem to have improved on an awful lot of things. So I've so far spent about 20-ish hours in the game, and could quite easily spend another 100 or so in the game, not just doing the missions and the challenges, but just pissing around basically. And overall, I'm actually thinking this is probably the kind of game I could see being my go-to game and just jumping at. And basically, some of the main issues I had with Just Cause 2 were sort of the ones that involved. Basically, what would happen is I would jump into Just Cause 2. Bugger around loads, mess around with a lot of stuff, enjoy myself, explode a lot of things, free some stuff, take over some stuff, and just explode things. Very much what I would tend to do in Saints Row games or Grand Theft Auto games. Never really actually achieve a whole lot other than mindless fun. And Just Cause 2 was very good at mindless fun, but it was quite poor at keeping you focused in, what the point of the game was. The story, the main missions, and getting you sort of funneled into those and not just messing around and then getting bored and leaving. And so I think Just Cause 3 has done quite a decent job of that. So first off, I just want to say that this is probably one of the best looking titles. Obviously, we've had the photorealistic stuff from The Witcher 3, which probably takes the cake for the best visuals. But this isn't a photorealistic title, but it still looks really, really, really good. Like, fantastic. This game has literally the best ocean, physics, graphics, the whole works, even in terms of the way that the boats react to it. The title looks wonderful. I mean, if you take a really close look at these grass textures and the tree textures, yes, they're quite 2D. They're not amazing, but if you just sort of look at the game and you're in a parachute or you're in a plane or you're in a helicopter and you just look at the game and you think, damn, this is good. Even the backdrops of those mountainous regions. I've gotten so many good pictures, print screens of just messing around with this title, and it just looks good. And yes, it's not photorealistic, but it still surprises you at how good a game can feel just when it's good art direction. I think that's it. I think the art direction has been so fantastic that it's made it look really vibrant. And they've done a lot of things with the colours, which I mentioned in the summary earlier. The other thing is the map is absolutely huge. So you've got this small island at like the bottom middle, which is already unlocked. It's already freely available to the rebel place. And then you've got a slightly larger island that's not that much bigger, and then a slightly larger island that's probably got 3 or 4 provinces, and then a massive, massive island, which is where sort of the mid to late game is set. This offers not just a absolute shed load of gameplay hours in terms of exploration, but also the missions are set across all of those. There are hundreds of challenges set across all of those, and of course there is tons and tons of villages, towns, and military complexes for you to take over to release from Di Ravello's grip or whatever. And so there's just a lot to do, and there is so much to do, and there's so much variation for you to do that it feels, most of the time it feels fresh. Yes, occasionally some of the challenges can be the same sort of thing, but because the map is so enormous, everything can be spread out into areas that are different. And I think one of the key things I want to mention here is the attention to detail, is that the game might be 400 square miles in size, but if you sort of look in specific areas, yes, there is a lot of sort of overarching fields and empty skies and big oceans that don't have a lot in them, but there's a really good attention to detail, and I think that's helped by the fact that they've got this nice little procedural AI and enemy generation where if you're in an area, it will automatically populate based on the surroundings, and that's quite nice. Sometimes it can be a bit, ooh, that's very blatantly being clipped in, or ooh, that's blatantly being clipped out, but overall it's very, very good. It's been very well done, and I have to applaud their attention to detail. Even just the nice tree scattering on the mountains and the way that you can traverse across everything, and nothing looks the same. That's the key point I want to mention, and that's something I mentioned in the summary video, is that in games like Dying Light, the internals of buildings were technically identical, even though the buildings were laid out in a different way. Whereas in this, everything feels different. Everything just looks, feels, and at no point in the game did I think, oh, this is just a copy-paste of that village, oh, this is just a copy-paste of that piece of ocean or whatever. Which is quite nice. It's nice to be surprised after you've travelled 100 miles and you've noticed that something is slightly different. The other thing is that with the addition of the wingsuit, that is actually pretty cool, and it adds this extra... There's just this little extra bit of depth, and because the parachute is cool, the idea of a reusable parachute along with a grappling hook was awesome. In the original Just Cause games, it was fantastic. But this wingsuit allows for you to travel in the event you don't have a vehicle, and you won't always have a vehicle available to you. You can, of course, request rebel drops, but the wingsuit actually makes a viable alternative. And very often I have found myself thinking, oh, that encampment's only 3 miles away. I'll just travel there by using the grappling hook and the wingsuit. Now, it does give you the option of face planting the floor if you accidentally touch the floor, or as if you go and check out the full review, the very last images of me wingsuiting, grappling hook, and then head planting, face planting rather, a tree, and actually felling the tree at the same time, which I thought was very impressive. Must have hit it with quite some force. But the wingsuit is really quite cool. It's nice to jump around, switch between the parachute and the wingsuit, maybe mess around with some entering of buildings and vehicles. And it's just a nice way that they've done it. It's a nice addition that hasn't been too much of a difference. The other thing I noticed is that when I was initially starting the game is that there weren't many vehicles, and that concerned me slightly. I noticed that you would get... you'd have your typical military vehicles like the Jeeps and the Humvees. Then you would have like the cheapo communist cars that they had back in the 80s or whatever. Then you'd have slightly better ones. Then you'd have like these middling saloon cars, and then you'd have these singular sports cars. And I thought, there's not that many vehicles, and that concerned me slightly. And then I noticed that as I progressed by unlocking provinces, as I progressed by doing the missions in between all of those and doing a few challenges, you do actually start to see a lot more vehicles, quite a lot of different ones. Like, I had never seen a Formula 1 car until I randomly decided to do a challenge. I got put in one, and because I completed it, I could then drive it to my garage, unlock it, and use it in future. And so it's quite nice that they start you off with quite a limited selection of items, including weapons. You only have 6 primary, 6 secondary, and 1 or 2 support weapons, and then only a few cars available to you, or a few military vehicles available to you, if not none at the start. And then they nicely procedurally unlock these new shiny things as you progress through the game, so it gives you a reason to progress, and it also ensures that the mid to late game isn't repetitive, and doesn't just mirror everything that you saw at the start of the game, which is a nice way to spread things across. The other thing I have to say is that the story is a lot more focused. One of the things that I mentioned in the summary video is that I started playing Just Cause 2, and I immediately got sidetracked by unlocking provinces and just doing crazy stuff and just enjoying myself a little bit for a few hours. And I did a couple of missions, but then I got sidetracked for basically a few weeks, and then I came back and I thought, maybe I should do the story, and I just looked at the map and I thought, where's the story? Where's the missions? Where do I start the missions? How do I do these missions? And the other thing is that a lot of the missions were basically the same thing you were doing when you were mucking around, and that's quite annoying. Whereas in this, the core story is a lot more focused. It's a lot easier to find your way back, and the characters are just plain better. I mean, Dima and Mario are actually interesting characters. They're quite funny. No, they're not magically amazing voice actors, but they do a really good job of giving you a vested interest to continue on the story mode, and it's a lot more focused, but it doesn't detract away from, hey, you can go over here and have a bit of fun if you want to. And that's quite nice. I think that the characters have been developed so well that they definitely complement the main story mode, and it complements the fact that this is just a no-nonsense fun title. This is a title where you're just going to go around and explode things, drive cars, fly planes, helicopters, explode lots of things, probably accidentally kill yourself with explosions, faceplant a few times when you're messing around with the wingsuit. A lot of this game is about self-set achievements or, challenges like that. There's always so many things to do. You can either do the main story mode, and you'll often find that on the way to the story mode you might think, oh, I'll just unlock this settlement, and then on the way past that settlement you go, oh, I only just need to unlock a few more, and then I've unlocked the province. Oh, I've unlocked that province and there's only 4 provinces on this map. I'll just go ahead and unlock them all. And that happens all over the place. And then there's these mods, where you can basically unlock passive or active abilities like boosting, increase the amount of rebel drops you can do, increase the amount of ammo you can have for certain weapons, and all these random different little mods which don't play a massive effect on the game, but they do one of two things. They make it so that A, you have something to work towards when you're doing challenges. Challenges in a lot of games are usually just, hey, do this. Great, you did that. good job. You can now pat yourself on the back, and that's all the rewards you get. Whereas in this, the challenges reward you with these little cogs or stars. You get 1 to 5 stars based on how well you do on the challenge, and then you can unlock other abilities based on the challenge that you've done and the amount of stars you've earned in that specific set of mods, and that's quite nice. And, you know, it means that you can either do missions, you can bugger around with provinces, you can just go around and cause havoc if you wish. You know, there is a point system for causing havoc, and that is there if you're choosing to connect to the servers. And then you can do these challenges, and there's just a lot to do. And very rarely do you find yourself so bored that you don't want to do any of it. I always think to myself, when I jump into this game, I'm usually playing 3 or 4 hour sessions, and I'll do a mission, 2 missions, and then I'll unlock a load of towns, and then I'll think, oh, hey, you know what, I'll do a couple of challenges just so I can unlock a few extra mods. And that's pretty cool. But the first thing I want to talk about in terms of negative is also to do with mods. Now, they do a very nice job of not being too important, but, you know, sort of complementing the side part of the main game. However, adding precision aim as a mod is not something I would ever think of as a sensible design choice. Obviously, yes, you can very easily get it by unlocking like 3 of 5 stars on the first shooting challenge you do. But I think there's only 3 or 4, or maybe even 5 shooting challenges in the whole map. And bear in mind that you won't necessarily visit the entire map for at least a few dozen hours. You may not necessarily unlock all of those shooting mods. And that's a little bit annoying, because the only reason I managed to unlock the precision aim mod to allow me to right click and, you know, aim over the shoulder a bit more closely was because I just decided to go AWOL and preload of provinces, and one of them happened to be one of these villages in the middle of the 2nd or 3rd island, I think, happened to have one of these shooting challenges, and that was how I unlocked precision aim. But locking precision aim by something that convoluted and something that sort of almost rare in the game just seems like a really, really terrible idea. It's the sort of thing that A, I would not put it behind a mod, but B, if I did, I would put it in a challenge that's quite early on, because in my opinion it's a very important thing, and it's a core gameplay mechanic that shouldn't be removed and locked behind an achievement or something like that. The other thing is they vastly improved the AI. I mentioned in the summary video again that basically in the previous game you could go on a rampage and not really be stopped. And in this one, the AI has improved in that they deal with you a lot better. And they've made it a little bit more challenging to capture certain military camps. You know, they've got the SAM sites. If you go in by helicopter, you can't just go and destroy everything and feel indestructible. You do have to think about the way you approach things. You do have to think about the fact that enemies are going to come and try and combat you with an effective counter method. If you go in with an attack helicopter with Hellfire missiles, they'll put you against 2 choppers with miniguns and another helicopter with attack missiles. Occasionally that balancing doesn't quite work out, but I'd say 9 times out of 10 they do a reasonably good job of countering the player so they don't feel too powerful. Obviously they have to unfortunately try and strike a balance between challenging but also mindless fun. And so one of the main problems I'm finding is that occasionally, yes, the AI is better than Just Cause 2, but occasionally the AI is still really quite stupid, and they'll just send van after van after van while you're roaming around in a tank that can one-shot all of them, and you'll be there for 15-20 minutes completely annihilating the enemy until they finally call in like a gunship to finally, you know, destroy the tank. But even then you don't necessarily die unless you're really quite bad at whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So the AI most of the time is relatively good, but still it needs a little bit of work in the way it deals with the player. I think this is down to the fact that the difficulty modes in the game, well, the fact there isn't any, is there for a more entertaining casual approach as opposed to a genuine challenging approach. I feel like the core main sort of 80% of the game is there to be entertaining and fun as opposed to challenging for those that are feeling a little bit more hardcore. So you'll probably find that occasionally the AI is a bit sort of, here they come again, I'll just destroy them as easy as I did last time. But for the most part, they have improved that aspect. The other thing I've noticed is that the damage model is a bit weird. So one of the main things I discovered is when I'm in a tank, it takes 2 hits to kill a Humvee. But if I throw a grenade at the Humvee, it explodes instantly. Now, you'd think that a tank shell is more effective than a grenade. Another thing that I've noticed is I can successfully destroy a Bavarian refinery, I think, which looks like this giant concrete pillar thing. Now, bear in mind that you can't shoot statues that well and achieve a whole lot unless you're in a helicopter with missiles or a minigun, and you spend a very, very long time shooting statues with a minigun. You can't destroy statues with guns that well. You have to use, your grappling hook. And yeah, you can somehow destroy these concrete reactors with guns. And the same goes for everything else. Like, you can sit in a helicopter with 2 miniguns shooting at a van trying to destroy it, and you'll be sat there for about 60 seconds. Now, that might not sound long, but when you're in game and you're just sat there aiming and shooting and shooting and shooting and it still doesn't explode, you think, this isn't really what I expected. But then you can go down to that van, throw a grenade, explode. And so the damage model's a bit erratic, and it's not just for vehicles either, it's also for characters. Some of even the basic soldiers are absolute bullet sponges. You can shoot them like 5 times or 10 times with a minigun on a helicopter and it still won't kill them, even though they have no armor, and you could kill them quicker with dual, revolver pistols. And it's just like, what is going on here? So the damage model is a bit hit and miss, and I think that needs rebalancing or dealing with somehow. And I feel like they're also, they're trying to deal with that to make some things feel more powerful and others maybe push you into the explosion model. The other thing in terms of attacking and damage is the amount of primary and secondary weapons. And so far, I when I got the game, I also got given the first piece of DLC, which has a couple of weapons or vehicles, I think. And overall, I think there's about 6 to 10 primary and 6 to 10 secondary weapons, probably less than 10 actually. And they're all unlocked bar 2 for both sections. And there's not a lot of variation between the weapons. Yes, they do have different firing mechanics, but they all feel the same. They all feel like they achieve the same thing. And most of them are already unlocked apart from 2, which is a bit annoying. So you don't really have much to work towards in terms of primary and secondary weapons. But at the same time, that's in a way negated by the fact that you have so many vehicles available to you and so many other ways to deal with exploding things. So I was a little bit disappointed that there's not a huge amount of variation in weapon types or in the damage that they do, or just in weapons in general. So that's a little bit of a negative, but it's not massive. I wouldn't say it's a huge thing. I would quite happily spend hundreds of hours in this game, regardless of the lack of weapons, and just be like, whatever, deal with it. The other thing that I want to mention as a negative is, freeing towns of Ravella's presence. And yes, they've added a lot of different ways to free a town. So you can destroy billboards, you can destroy listening posts, you can destroy those vans, you can destroy speakers, you have to explode reactors, you can have to explode fuel tanks, you have to cause havoc, or you have to call in the rebels into military bases. There's a lot of different aspects involved in overall the freeing of a town, but you'll very quickly find that every single town has at least 6, if not more, of all of those core things. So yes, there's a lot of different objectives you have to complete in order to free a town, but as you progress through the game, certainly once I freed the first 3 islands of presence and all I had left was a larger island, is that by the time I got to the last island, it was just the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again, and it gets very repetitive. So that is a little bit of an annoyance that it's repetitive, but at the same time, I can sort of understand it, because I myself could not possibly think of a way of swapping things up a bit, aside from the problem is if you decided to approach it in a different fashion, you would sort of negate the fact of that it's mindless explosion fun. And so I can't think of any ways to deal with freeing settlements or villages or military compounds or towns or cities without experiencing this repetitiveness, because the only other ways you could think of doing it is taking away from the general point that this is a game about explosions and big guns and grappling hooks. And they've literally filled every possible combination of things that harnesses those main aspects of the game. And yes, it's repetitive, yes, you do a lot of the same stuff again, but there isn't much else that they could do without saying, okay, you're going to have to get out your helicopter that you're firing missiles at this encampment at, feeling indestructible and awesome, and go and do something slightly annoying. And that's what the listening post thing does. That means you have to lose all of your all of your 5 stars or however many stars of alert you have, and then start pressing buttons and floating around. And that's quite a good thing. It's nice, but I can't imagine the game with more of those sorts of things. Because it was quite jarring, and it was like, now I have to somehow lose all of my alert and then get on with this thing. And it was interesting. It was a little bit more challenging than just rolling in with the tank and exploding everything. But at the same time, it's a catch-22 situation. You either negate the fact that the game is about explosions and add some slightly more, some more in-depth ways of freeing settlements, or you face repetition and deal with the fact that it's going to get repetitive, but at least you're using the primary mechanics that we have so lovingly developed around explosions. So, a lot of the negatives around this game, I'm not really sure I see a way around. The AI is specifically there to ensure that the game is entertaining and not too challenging. There's not that many secondary weapons, but they are negated by the fact that there are so many vehicles. There is so much content in this game. So overall, there are a few negatives that a lot of people could look at, but they're all quite small in comparison to what the game offers. The pros outweigh the cons 100-fold. This is an absolutely gorgeous title. It's, plain entertainment, just good old fun. You could, I could quite happily go downstairs, sit on a Steam machine, stream this down from my PC upstairs, and then go, I'm just going to sit here and throw some grenades around, do some gliding, drive around, fly a helicopter, and shoot at the military. And it's good. And the fact that it is this mindless entertainment for a couple of dozen hours, as well as the fact that the main mission is actually interesting and the characters are good. And so I think this is actually just a genuinely really awesome title. Yes, everyone, I'm sure, is a critic and could find a few things that they say, I don't think this is good. But if you look at the whole package, you have to say, well, these are a resultant, force of what all the good things that they did. All the good things of trying to make it an entertaining title, challenging, engaging, without being too boring, and without, taking away from the aspects that most people love about the game. And so, overall, I highly recommend Just Cause 3. I think if you like Just Cause 2, you'll like Just Cause 3 even better. And if you were sort of a little bit apprehensive of Just Cause 2 after playing for a bit, you'll generally find that there is a lot more focus in this title. This title is Just Cause 2 with focus and good development of core game mechanics. And so overall, I can't say that I would think that anyone would be necessarily disappointed in this game. Unless they absolutely hate shooting games, there's no reason not to like it. It's a good, fun entertainment title. It's a AAA title that doesn't take itself too seriously, but still, has a decent storyline and decent characters. So yeah, I feel like I might have repeated myself a few too many times, but I just want to... Yes, I've spent the last 10 minutes talking about negatives, but they're small. They're small things in comparison to what the game offers. It's a wonderful game, and I think I could find myself playing this quite a lot over the next few weeks until I finally complete it and just get bored of this enormous map in skydiving. So I've got so much more to do. 20 hours really isn't enough. If I need at least 100 to give a full rundown of this title, because there's just so much to do, so many challenges, and it's all quite varied. So overall, it's pretty ace. Go ahead and check out the link below for the full written review, for all our in-depth thoughts, and of course performance analysis for how the game runs. You'll probably notice in the last 2 reviews I haven't covered the video options menu, because I figured that was a bit of an annoyance at the start of the video, so go ahead and the usual video option stuff is covered in the written review. Join us next week on... Actually, no. Join us this week on Saturday for our Next Week in Gaming episode. And, of course, next week on Thursday for our review of Helldivers. So that's it from us. Hope you've enjoyed this review, and we'll see you guys next week.